So I'm here again with Jason King, and well, we'll discuss what we're going to discuss. So, yeah, you were saying?
Oh, about what? About the nature of mythology?
We were starting to say something about the Yazidi, and
yeah, I really don't know, because you texted me something and it seemed really open-ended, and we were talking about the mythos of H.P. Lovecraft, and then I kind of wove that into the concept of what you were broaching me on the text, which was the mythos of the Yazidis. And I'm like, because you were saying, well, there's people that want to make the mythos of H.P. Lovecraft real, but I don't think it's any less real than the mythos of any other culture. I mean, I think things are as real as you want them to be, if that makes any sense. So,
well, that's certainly true, and I've there's experience connected to things, and one's own experience is real, even if something's made up, like people running with the H.P. Lovecraft thing and making grimoires based on it when that don't match up into anything that you could possibly think is. I mean, if you look at the languages involved and stuff.
Well, actually, that's funny, because I think even the grimoires themselves, if you go back in time and you look at them, I think they were just pious fiction. So I think that you can kind of slap that down, like I do, as having what might be called fundamentally an atheist worldview. So if you have an atheist worldview, ultimately, then anything is going to kind of be made up, but anything can kind of work if you have an understanding of the psyche and whatnot. So if you went back to the 1500s and whatnot, and when they started introducing all these goetic spirits and all that bullshit, they were playing Dungeons and Dragons. But I mean,
I don't know if that's where the whole thing started, but I think a lot of us, I'm sure I have at some point mispronounced the whole thing, because Carol Poke-Runyon pronounces it Goetia, and I mean, he reads Greek. He should know better where it comes from, but that's how he constantly pronounces it, and I don't know where that came from.
It's not a Greek word, as far as I know. It's German, but I could be wrong about that. I mean, educate me if I'm fucking wrong, but I think it comes from the German. But I mean, who the fuck knows? We can always be educated about shit, but I think it's one of those things where it's like, you want to pronounce something a certain way because of your own native language, and Goetia sounds kind of like a little bit harsh, and Goetia sounds like it rolls off your tongue a little bit better, but it comes from the word goety, which is not goishi, it's goety. Goety is the root word. So you would think the derivative would carry over that, pronunciation, but who the fuck knows? I mean, I guess we'd have to do
there is dialect things. It could be one of those American versus Britain things.
Sure, whatever. I mean, I'm not trying to.
But yeah, I don't want to go into the whole etymology thing and thinking that just because you found some etymological, there's that this word kind of, sometimes it's exactly, you follow it clear to ancient Egypt or something, and it has basically the same meaning that it does in some modern language, but very often that's not quite the case. It's like, did you know in the Bible it never says that God gets angry? It says his nostrils flare.
Okay. and Thanos can snap. I mean, I don't. I mean, like, it's a superhero. It's a comic book. I don't. I mean, I was watching that Netflix series called Messiah with my son, and I kind of had to explain it to him. I'm like, look, it's a comic book. It's based on a comic book, meaning the Book of Revelation. I don't see any of these things as being like hyper real. I see them as being only real in like a kind of like a mindscape. So I don't really give anything too much credence. And besides, I don't think we know how the ancient Egyptians pronounce anything because all we have is the hieroglyphics and whatnot, which is, you know.
Well, you figure that probably there was some sort of vowel marks or whatnot, but it's also some modern languages are very difficult to pronounce with a whole string of consonants or vowels or something, and why can't ancient Egyptian be pronounced that way? But I certainly don't think that Golden Dawn style pronunciations of things are, you know, what they were, or E.A. Budge kind of tells you everything you need to know to pronounce some of these things right, but then he contrasts a lot of words. Like he'll contrast as many as 3 or 4 letters into one sound because in such and such language, they don't, it's a smaller word. So that's how he wants to say it.
I mean, yeah, okay, whatever. I mean, to me, a lot of that is like, I don't know. I think you can, what was it? It was Lex Luthor in the original Superman the movie that made that joke about a genius can read the ingredients on a chewing gum wrapper and understand the meaning of the universe. It's like, yeah, I mean, you can do whatever you want with things. You can make anything as powerful or as successful as you yourself are. Because I think what ultimately matters is the person using whatever form that they're using magically. I don't think that there's any potency in the form in and of itself. I think that that's all materially inputted, if that makes any sense. So I don't really I don't really care. You can pronounce words wrong. You can make up fucking shit. You can make up deities. You can make up, like VK just did. He made up a whole new angel, and I thought that shit was cool. I'm like, yeah, I'd buy that Pokemon card. That would be a really cool Pokemon card to add to my collection. But at the end of the day, does it work for him? Maybe it does. I mean, and who gives a shit at the end of the day? To me, that's my, the way I approach it. So I'm not looking for finding any kind of like ultimate metaphysics out of all this, because I don't think there is any ultimate metaphysics. I think metaphysics is somewhat dead in a sense, which is where I get Kantian, and that's where I get Buddhist. And you said this was going to be partially about Buddhism, but when you can kind of cut through that veil and see that there really is nothing else. There is no other side to it. So what you impart to it is what it imparts back to you, and it's like this, not a dichotomy, but it's like a symphony. It's kind of like a harmony. It's like when you resonate at a certain vibration type thing. So,
well, one thing I think that it looks like Buddhist culture is more open to is that when they think is the they adjust their the adjustment of terminology and stuff. Well, I mean, not just in terms of terms, but you know what I mean. They realize there's a misunderstanding when something's talked about, and then someone comes in and comes up with a new way of speaking about it to try to kind of go back to what was trying to be said, because of that, because people are starting to have some sort of ideas with the term, and they want to. I'm not articulating that too well, am I?
No, but it looks like you have a hole in your ceiling, which is like, that's pretty cool. Like, is that where you climb up and go to sleep? I'm just fucking with you, man. Yeah, Buddhism is very syncretic. It can be. Like, for example, Tibetan Buddhism, they took a lot from the Bon tradition, which is like the, indigenous people of Tibet. So they took a lot of that, and that figures into their deepest level teachings to a degree. But to me, the core of Buddhism is something that is beyond Buddhism. It's, even labeling it that way is kind of silly to me, because I take aspects of, innermost, what was called innermost secret teachings of Tibet, and I reify those through a Western mind, which is different from what they do. Sometimes they'll reify it through a Bon tradition. Sometimes they'll reify it through a lower level teaching tradition. They'll teach meditations, but they won't teach you the mantras or the mudras, the hand signals, whatever, the gang signs, if you want to get funny with it. It's a thing that defies category, in other words. And you can find this in, any indigenous tradition, like Native American tradition, for example, or Aboriginal Australian tradition, for example, you'll find this same concept, but it's usually not like, it's reserved. In other words, it's reserved for those that have kind of broken beyond categorization to the point where you understand that, like I was just saying, and we were talking about that, myth is essentially it's a human creation. It's not that there's something out there, there's some demons or some gods or angels or whatever the fuck out there that we're actually contacting. No, what we're doing is we're kind of clarifying our own mentation. We're kind of focusing. We're kind of like, stripping down the way we view reality, which is a mysterious and wonderful thing that none of us really can truly get to. So we have to use symbols. So we create alphabets, we create language, we create all these mathematics, we create all these things to reify a reality that we are truly terrified by because of its magnificence, because of its infinitude. So once you get beyond that, then you get calm with it, and that's where the meditation aspect, that's where the samadhi comes from, that's where the meditating under the Bodhi tree comes from. It's all that, it's symbolism. I mean, it might be weird, but you can, once you understand things for what they are, then you can really start, I would say, appreciating them, if that makes any sense. So
well, and if people get past the material culture or whatever associated with any mythology, it's, you compare any two of them, it's mostly the same physical types of reality. It's the same psychological stuff. It's just,
yeah, they're called topoi, which is, I think, Greek for types. So they kind of have exactly the same structure, if you will.
But yeah, people, it's like, you mentioned VK Johanna, but my thing is his language. It's like, for some reason, the guy can't seem to understand that speaking different languages doesn't mean the same thing. It's like Arabic versus Aramaic. Allahi means exactly the same thing. It's whatever you think is your God. That's it. That's what the term means in both those languages. And somehow, God in that language versus the other, and that's the most obvious thing. That's fairy, Davos, jinn, whatever. It's all the same sort of being. But Goetia being a pious, they kind of want to downplay the other things that exist that they haven't accepted into their rank, into their pantheon, and but I mean, if these things are supposed to have choice, why in the world would just reciting the, oh, I'm a good Christian and I'm going to do this, and why in the world would that force anybody to do anything?
Well, I don't know. I mean, one of my biggest critiques about Yah Wadiy is that if you look at the structure of it, you can see exactly when it was written and by who it was written. In the sense of when you start talking about dukes and kings and princes, what the fuck are you really talking about? I mean, you're talking about a certain kind of hierarchy that existed within a certain type of culture at a certain time. I mean, I'm sure if the Mongols left us anything in the way of sacred texts, they'd be called Khans. But no, they're called kings. So, I mean, like, it just depends on how you want to see shit. And all I'm saying is, it's like I said before, I mean, I don't want to oversimplify anything, but it's comic books. It's like, I don't know, can you summon Spider-Man? I mean, maybe you can. I don't fucking know.
That's one of the things I did. That's one of the things that I threw out there at one of these Ekankar meetings. Is I went as basically, because I heard of a guy who did this. Is he summoned the Quaker Oats guy to visible appearance and had conversations about oatmeal, and I brought up that story, and he's like, "Oh well, no, it's much better to do it with one of our," because Paul Twitchell basically wrote a bunch of comic book characters when to fill in his little blanks. And now, people are, picture this, and then it starts to interact like people do with tarot cards. You can make a tarot card come to life, but that doesn't mean the tarot card is. But yeah, the Goetia with people reading those descriptions and expecting to see that, and eventually they visualize it.
Yeah, well, do you know the story behind the Quaker Oats guy and the Quaker Oats, the whole fucking Kellogg cereal? You ever heard about that? Because they're related. They were weirdos.
The Kellogg's guy wanted to give people was recommending yogurt enemas, and he believed in not only circumcision, but he believed in clitorectomies and stuff. So he took it, further than usual.
Well, yeah, these are really weird anti-sex individuals. And so the whole point behind both the Kellogg company and the Quaker Oats company was that if you ate those foods, that it would reduce your inclination to masturbate. So it was basically it wasn't, it was originally designed as a cure for masturbation. Because these people are weirdos, man. And like that's what I'm saying. That's why I can't take anything anybody does, way too seriously, because I know exactly how retarded human beings are at times. And it's like, yeah, okay, you tripped out on acid and you saw the toad god. Okay, great. But don't expect me to...
Like last year, I actually, I thought it was a real possibility that these idiots thought that they were going to be able to storm a military base. And then people showed up and saw that they emptied the place out to make it easier to kill them in case they actually showed up in mass to do that sort of thing with military, with tanks and stuff lined up every so many yards and whatnot. And then people started claiming, oh, no, it's just but actually chanting, oh, bring out the aliens so we can have sex with them. I don't remember exactly how they said it, but, but I don't think that it's out of the possibility that people are actually stupid enough to actually go through with that sort of thing just because they didn't then,
What are you talking about? The whole Storm Area 51 thing?
Yeah, they expected a lot more people and all that, and the Air Force even posted pictures. Here's the jet that we're going to fight you with if you actually show up, even a tenth of what you say, and it's more like 1% or less actually showed up, and people didn't actually, try to storm the thing. It was just,
Yeah, because I mean, shit, you got to buy a fucking plane ticket to New Mexico or wherever the fuck that shit is. So, yeah, it takes some fucking dedication to do some shit like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, was that guy from the fuck show is that? The guy with the big poofy hair? Yeah, he's got some Greek name.
George. I don't.
You know who I'm talking about, though.
Greek names are hard. Yeah.
Yeah, that's on every fucking Alien Encounters, and it's like everything. And to me, what's really fucking disingenuous about these people with those programs.
They switch their story every season. They're constantly switching. What does this mean, and how are we going to redraw the lines of this artifact to fit our story? But I'm sorry I derailed it.
Oh no, but to me, what really is fucked up is that they're basically not willing to give any indigenous civilization any credit for anything they've done. Everything has to be aliens. Everything and anything is fucking aliens, except we don't see them now, except maybe we do. It's really weird. I mean, they have no faith in the fact that people could be.
The college I went to, the anthropology professors were really on that point. And I mean, there's some stuff that the ancient people were doing that we're actually not doing now. So why in the world? But look at how much, mega churches, LDS temples, all sorts of stuff. People are spending hundreds of thousands of hours, millions of hours to pay for religious buildings, and somehow the ancient people couldn't get together as a family. As our family is going to do that, spend several thousand hours and do this work, and yours going to do, we're all going to group together and build ourselves a temple. It's like the idea that people couldn't actually do that is really insulting. I think it's modern people that have become lazy and stuff. Not everybody, but you know what I mean. It's there's reason to think we're not as smart and all that.
I totally agree. Yeah, I'm 100%. Exactly. That's what I mean. It's just because you don't understand how, the megalith builders could fucking raise up a 200-ton stone doesn't mean that it can't be done. You need aliens to do it just because your dumbass can't do it. Exactly. You're 100% on that, man. And it is highly insulting to these ancient cultures to basically say, well, they couldn't do it. It must be aliens. And when you go like deep in the rabbit hole with this shit, because it comes on every Friday night on the History Channel or whatever the fuck, and I just go to sleep to that shit, and like I'll catch certain bits and pieces as I'm falling asleep, and I'm like, holy shit, they want to attribute every fucking thing to aliens. It's like there's no, like, were there even humans at this point? Like, you can't even fucking like admit that there were humans at this point. Everything is fucking aliens. It's fucking crazy, man.
Well, one of the interesting thing about humans at one point or another is it's every so often they just bring the date back. It's like, but even when they had evidence, some parts, a lot of public schools, they were using, this creationism thing where the world can't be all that old. That was actually being taught in public schools for a long time. And I mean, now it's universally, you got to go to a private school to hear that garbage, but they just keep on. I remember when when I was taking some courses, they finally figured out that humans had been around for several million years, and there's something else that puts it back further now. And but I like some of those programs in the way that there's some things that they talk about that they're bringing up some stuff that I haven't heard of, but it's a whole, well, kind of pass over the conclusions because you can't trust the conclusions, but let's look at the evidence and say, whatever. But of course, paying attention because they redraw, ancient aliens. I don't know. I don't know how long it's been since I've seen, how many years it's been since I've seen one of those shows, but they would literally redraw the lines or something like that. Did you see that joke about the Santa Claus being the alien thing?
No, actually, I didn't. But let me ask you this. You're probably familiar with a guy named Zecharia Sitchin, right? He wrote The 12th Planet, and he's big on this whole concept of Nibiru.
I know some of those cuneiform things well enough to know that he puts forward mostly good translations with significant flaws scattered throughout them. I wish he gave some evidence of where some of the stuff he's talking about comes from.
Well, no, look, here's the thing. There probably is something that is a, nowadays we call it a ninth planet because we demoted Pluto. But there is probably something out there in the Oort cloud or wherever, way out there in the, where the asteroid meteors come from and all that bullshit in the comets.
Yeah, I've seen evidence that there's probably a couple things out there that are significant, but
here's the thing: they're so far away from the sun that they'd be ice fucking cold. And this guy's trying to argue that this thing flies on a 12,000 year elliptical, and he goes through all that fucking math to try to prove.
Okay, 3,600 because they had that number.
Well, yeah, but it's all bullshit because how are you surviving when you're way out there in the fucking, like, I mean, you really have to jump through mental hoops.
Well, the thing with some of these, it's like people will throw something in mythologically that makes, they can't prove it wrong at the time just to add more detail. It's like Ibn Kathir is one of the most criticized Quran commentators, and he makes several mistakes. I have a big old book, several mistakes. I mean, I'd like to see any other significant scripture commentator that has that. But one of the things he throws in a few weird things, like although linguistically it's not necessary for a rock to turn into a camel, or the world, or there's no I don't know where he gets this world on the back of a whale thing, but he throws some stuff in. But a lot of these, Zachariah Sitchin and whatnot bring up these stories that prove that they're not talking about anything physical, because if they're really whether they're going between the planets with space, whatever, they can't be in spaceships or however they're doing it. You don't have physical beings that you could put in a room hanging out of freezing cold, metal melting hot situations. It just doesn't work like that. And that's part of those stories, is these beings are hanging off the spaceships and whatnot, in the hottest and coldest environments that, well, I mean, the sun's hotter, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, that was my point, is that when you look at it, like even when you talk to these flat earth motherfuckers, and it's like, okay, explain a lunar eclipse. And you're done at that point. I mean, you can try, but at the end of the day, come on, man. Just the lengths of which you have to go to explain some of the kind of shit that people have to make their little, retardations fit. It's like Occam's razor, cut all that bullshit off. It's just bullshit. I mean, yeah, sure, you can fucking say, well, granted, it's out there in like pretty much absolute zero conditions for basically 90% of its fucking rotation around the sun, but they have an artificial dome around it, and it traps the heat that they already had in it. And
yeah, and having gold on your shields, it's like that. The gravitational thing makes no sense. It is possible that there's a couple spots in the solar system that something big hit something else big, and that's why we have the things. There's scientists that think that, but it's not the same thing every time,
Well, yeah, I mean, the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter is the prime example, right?
Yeah, that's
There probably was some kind of planetoid or planet there that got hit by something and left its remains and whatever. But I mean, we can't really know for sure, but let's not try to make a comic book out of it. Or let's. But just understand it's a comic book. That's my entire point. I mean, I don't take anything too seriously. Except 1 + 1 is 2. That's pretty much certain.
So why was there any particular reason that you picked the Semsnied Rengrol as a Buddhist text and the Al-Jilwa as, well, I think that's was a representative sort of text, but is there any reason why you picked those in particular to comment on?
Well, actually, I did not comment on Semsnied. I think it comments on itself. But you're right. I did do a verse by verse. Well, actually, what's funny is I didn't. I included all of my commentary, but I did not comment on every verse. So you'll see jumps in there, like especially later on between certain verses. But the idea was
I just noticed that today. I didn't remember that's there is no comment on chapter 5, and
yeah, it was my commentary, but it wasn't the entire Al-Jilwa. But basically, this was something that was held up, early on in online Satanism as being like, the devil's Bible, sort of, in a sense. This is like, we're going to try to find the earliest tradition of, devil worship and whatnot. And so it was kind of a relic. It's a relic in a sense. Kind of like if you got the deluxe edition, you'll get 2 Libers that I also wrote way back in the day. I can't even. I mean, one of them was Liber Azazel, and then the other one was, I think, Liber Domini Satani or something like that, which is like two. These are just like kind of reflections on what Satanism is or has become. But Satanism to me is kind of like my day job, whereas Buddhism is what I am. So it's kind of like I exist on different levels. And as far as Semsnid goes, it's generally regarded amongst Tibetan practitioners of the Dzogchen, I would say school, and then within them the Semsday tradition, as being the most perfect representation of what the whole thing is about. And I don't believe it needs a commentary. I think, if you try to comment on it, you're only going to dirty it. You're only going to, kind of like fuck it up. I mean, so that's why I gave it pure. I didn't comment on it. Because I think if you read that text, if you actually read that text, I don't think there's any. I mean, some people hold up the Diamond Sutra, and I know that's some people's favorite and shit. To me, I don't think it holds a candle. I think if you read it and really get it, you'll understand why I put it in there. So I didn't, comment on it or anything like that, because I think then I would just be kind of like sticking my finger in the cake and fucking the cake up for everybody else. Like, oh, here's the cake, and I put my fucking finger in it, and you're like, oh shit, you put your finger through the cake. Why'd you do that shit? Cake was good. So that's a metaphor, by the way. So,
Well, yeah, certainly some text, but for me, it tends more to be like, there's like side information, or there's perhaps something about the way something's translated that maybe there's something I want to say. But I do think there are some texts that's, as it is, as would be said, but like the Bhagavad Gita as it is isn't really the Bhagavad Gita as it is. It's so commentated that it's not.
No, it's that dude. It's the fucking Hare Krishna guy, right? That's the Hare Krishna guy, the Prabhupada guy, or whatever the fuck his name is. I read that shit in high school. What? I read that shit in high school. It came in like multiple volumes. The Bhagavad Gita as it is. And it's like, I got volume 1. And I started reading the story. And when that nigger started defending fucking racism, meaning the caste system, I was like, nope, sorry. See you later. Your philosophy is flawed. That turned me off immediately. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Some of that bald-headed ass.
Yeah. There is some racism and sexism and some other some anti-scientific issues and stuff that come through the movement.
Find me some racism in the Semsnian Rangrol, and I'll shut the fuck up. Till then, I can't do that.
Yeah, I'm not.
Hey, give me a second. Hold on. Sorry, dude. I had to, my battery fucking pack was like falling out the wall. So it gave me your PC's getting ready to turn off. My wife beats this fucking shit up. So, that's bad. Give me a second.
Well, they make a lot of these machines to, they used to make them to you get a computer or a TV or something that lasts 10 years, and now they make some of these things that our goal is to make it last for 2 years and go buy another one.
Yeah, it's called planned obsolescence. Yeah, I get it. She's got a weird plug on this shit. It doesn't really hold into the wall too well, so. Yeah, it's called planned obsolescence, bro. It's the vacuum cleaner argument. I've made it a billion times.
A lot of these gurus operate on that platform. Is that, you know, as I said, Paul Twitchell, the founder of Eckankar, he was caught making in speeches saying stuff I've heard in some of the recordings of him. Oh, I haven't changed it yet. So that's the living guru model. Is not only is it, oh, he's got to have the modern way, that there can't be some sort of teaching that's going to be able to be applied in different situations. You got to have a living guru. But not only that, but next year he could change the rules on you.
Yeah, I mean, sure, I get that. I just, like I said, man, for the people that that mentality works for. I mean, I understand you because you're kind of like a scholar of obscure religious traditions and mythos and books and stuff like that. But you don't fall for it. It's not like, oh yeah, this dude's like, he's legit. So as long as you're on the level up with it.
The thing I keep finding is, all sorts of these figures didn't want a religion like they all said. You find about Zoroaster, Muhammad, a bunch of the others. I don't, they don't approve of people founding religions. I don't want to be considered some founder or something, but yeah, that's what people make out of them.
Okay, is that like the did Jesus intend to start Christianity argument? Because no, he didn't really, but it did. Like, you don't have to intend to start a religion. You don't have to be L. Ron Hubbard. But just your actions, depending on who you are and what kind of message you're giving, could possibly do that. Even Buddha didn't want to start, Siddhartha, he didn't want to start a religion. He was against religion. He was an atheist. But shit happened. People are people, You're going to do what they're going to do.
Well, the putting of things, one of the main things that I keep, that one sees over and over again, is that, they were putting the spiritual authority, the psychological authority, or whatever, of people back into their own hands. Perhaps even saying, the government's messed up. Let's try to change society so that's not the case. But so I think there's enough evidence that a lot of these things that happened, it's, they even left behind, it's like what happened with the story of Cyrus the Great.
Was that Alexander's father, or did I get the wrong? That was somebody's father, right? Was it? Okay, tell me the story.
Not Alexander the Great. Cyrus the Great, and he said, 100 years of this has never had the opportunity to be said, but to be tested per se. But 100 years of just rule would basically eliminate killing and all sorts of stuff, and he allowed various religious freedoms of various sorts. But what happened within a couple generations? The same old set of priests and statecraft was back to doing its thing, to the point where, it's like the one of the issues that happened with the Achaemenid.
He was that dude from Persia. I got it wrong. Yeah, he was that dude from Persia, right?
Yeah, he was literally. I don't know why. Why in the world? Well, I know why, but if this guy was known as the King of Two Horns, I mean, Zulkarnain, Zulkarnain, or whatever language you're saying this, it's obvious who they're speaking of, and there's other details that back this up. But it wasn't too long, and just like Akbar the Great in India, is that the guy's name? He actually wanted to encourage and support the recording of traditions and stuff like this that was going on, in addition to allowing freedoms. But a couple generations go by, and then the priests, then the kings start ordering the priests, and the priests start, to the point where a king went to the priest and said, there's nothing in your scripture that prevents me from marrying my own daughter. I think the thing was, and basically there's a silent point, but a couple generations down they find out, the dude actually had it written in. But just like the mullahs and stuff of Iran, after a couple generations got a level of power and restriction upon the people, that they figured it was done before. The Mobeds did it, let's do it again. I jumbled in, but
okay. Hey, look, man, I'm gonna bounce because I do have to go to work tonight, and this was kind of on the spur. So
okay.
If you got like one or two things you want to hit, like before I dip, go ahead. I ain't trying to fucking diss you like that, but yeah, I mean, I was like, I didn't know what you were talking about. I thought you were gonna try to bring somebody else in here, and we were gonna have some kind of thing going on. But no, I don't know, because you said a new format, so I didn't know what the fuck.
Well, yeah, we don't have time for the new format, and that's perfectly fine. Because basically, I thought that I have this book over here, and there's basically I was going to use it as an outline to get a new group of opinions or whatnot together. But I mean, since the warming quarter is starting, any particular thoughts on the whole spring thing?
Damn, that's interesting, because my favorite time of the year is fall, like late fall, early winter. That's my favorite time of the year. It's also when I was born, so no surprise there. Spring to me is kind of like an acid trip. I'll just say that. I don't even know how to fucking explain it. I mean, there's good and bad in every season, I think. I think late winter is probably the most dismal. You know what I mean? But yeah, renewal. I mean, it's rebirth. It's all that shit. It's Easter. Everybody fucking knows how the shit fits liturgically within the year. But that's all up here, bro.
Yep, I definitely get that. I think if you put Buddhism, if you group out the major religious groupings, well, I guess into 22 doesn't really, that's difficult. But I think Buddhism per se would fit. I'd kind of put it as the chariot.
Really? I mean, mapping it onto the tarot?
I mean, if one's going to say one card, which card would you put it?
None. I mean, I think it defies carding. I think that's the entire point of it. I mean, that's just the way I view it. But I mean, if you wanted to say the Fool, you could say the Fool. If you wanted to say the universe, you could say the universe. I mean, I don't really see it being anything other than one of those two. But shit.
Well, certainly when you see extra cards, that's one of the things that you see, is that it's either that. I haven't seen it as the full, but when you see like a Buddhist tarot, you typically end up seeing like a division of an extra card as a universe card.
There's no such thing as a Buddhist tarot. Sorry to break your bubble on that. There's something somebody might have called that, but there's no such thing.
Well, I mean, I know it doesn't per se directly fit into culture, but I mean, translating into terms of that's what I think all the modern tarots are. It's translating one culture or movement into the format.
Yeah, that's interesting, because one of the earliest decks that I was proficient with when I was learning under my mentor was the Native American tarot. So I know what you mean, but at the same time, I think that, like, well, of course, the Hanged Man was called the Sun Dance in that tarot, because they're trying to translate the ritual. But
How would you think? How would you think a Sundance would be done? I mean, without the how do you think one could get to that state without per se, starving and beating yourself almost to death?
Well, and I forget where this is. It might be Bolivia. It might be somewhere where they have the ritual where you have to wear the glove with the fire ants in it, or not the fire ants, the bullet ants, and it's done repeatedly. So there's some cultures that to us is very, like hard to understand. But yeah, they would literally draw 4 lines on your back, 2 each above both of your shoulder blades. They would pull the skin up and they would throw a rope through that and they would hang you up. And it was something that, that was their test of manhood. And it's hard for us to see and understand because our culture is soft compared to them. I mean, you can look at there's all kind of cultures out there that are, you can go back to the Spartans and shit and the shit they did. I mean, shit gets rough.
Well, I definitely see that we have to, it's best to look past one's own cultural hangups, although that is really, I think it's coming back. Maybe I'm not interacting with the right people, but I think the whole blood and soil stuff is picking up in recent years.
Well, I mean, I don't know nothing about no neo-Nazi, whatever the fuck that shit is. I mean, I guess that's where the term comes from, but yeah, I mean, if the world keeps getting warmer and warmer like it's doing, then yeah, we might have to toughen up. So that's going to fall.
Well, I think whether a coming disease or whether that sort of thing, I think, unfortunately, we reside in a country that's probably going to have one of the higher death rates of the whole thing. But I don't think it's like, some of these groups that just, like I was talking with someone else I interviewed on this channel. They think they're going to be, they're going to cause the problem, even cause the problems to divide up society. And that's just going to be some survival for the fittest where they get to be rulers or something. And I don't think that's going to quite work that way either. But
no, I agree with you. I disagree with whoever that was. But I also disagree with you that I don't think the United States is going to have the hardest problem in the world. I think what you're going to see is, places that are closer to the equator, you're going to start seeing like a shift where things move up and move down. And migration, I think, Asia's going to get hit the hardest.
Oh, well, with climate change, you're going to definitely deal with some areas that are just going to change so drastically that they can't survive where they're at with the system that they are, and they are going to want to move off somewhere else. And, okay, we're going to have some roads cut off and a lot of our trade cut off, but we're not going to. There are some places that are going to have higher problems, but I mean, as far as other than just the cutting off of supplies and stuff, and I mean, you see people that can grow thousands without much effort, thousands of dollars worth of food, not really knowing what they're doing, and huge lawns. How far do you have to go to see some places to see nothing in terms of? To see something growing in terms of food.
Oh, I have no idea. I can't really see the future. I'm not good at that kind of shit. I hear they have an app for it, though. I'm gonna look into that. But hey, let me bounce.
Yeah, well, I'll let you go. So we'll probably end up talking again at some point.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's just like I do have to work tonight. Normally, I try to do this on my night off. That way, I can have full time.
I thought Tuesday was your day, but maybe that changed.
It used to be. It changed. It keeps changing.